Hello, this is R Rats with Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between Portola and Credit for Debit. This is played in Team 53 event in the first round. Let's have a look. Okay. Kind of a slow play, Queen's Pawn type opening. And I've seen this type of formation several times. There's a very interesting game already posted this week with JBH Chess, where he played the black side of this and takes on some interesting similarities with colors reversed. I'm kind of against playing h3. I've done it before myself. It loses a tempo, it weakens the king side, and the idea is to preserve the bishop. Well, if you want to preserve the bishop, why not play it to another square? So the whole key is, will the bishop be a useful piece on f4, or let me rephrase that, the h2 b8 diagonal. Okay, so let's have a look, see what continues. Okay, so again, this bears some striking similarities to the other game, and we'll get there momentarily. Okay, and here's the point. Now Portola has played c3 in the game with JBH Chess. He ran into the pawn chain on b2 to d4 with colors reversed to counteract his fianchettoed bishop, and that's what we have here. And what happened in that game was white, with colors reversed, black in this case, put the knight over on the side, and white didn't bother dropping it back to h3. I don't think he'd weakened himself. He ended up taking back on f4, and he did it quite successfully. So it's not always necessary to save the bishop. Okay, so let's just go on and see. Definitely both games are worth a look to get the idea down. Okay, so not much has happened until finally black plays the thematic e5, which is something white will do in a King's Indian reverse type formation. So now white has to deal with his bishop, but first he exchanges off a set of pawns, and now white has achieved his aim and tucked his bishop on h2 at the cost of a tempo, and he's kept it there. Now the question is, how can we utilize that bishop since we've put it there? Is it going to be a dead piece? And I'll offer some ideas for white to improve his play here in a little bit. Okay, bishop e6, good move. Now here I think white got a little over ambitious. Okay, queen a4. I'll just show you an alternative move, make black prove something here. Okay, the first idea that runs into my mind is to put the knight on b3, and I'll show you why. The idea of putting the knight on b3 is it has a thematic idea of going to c5, and that's always a good square for a knight. Maybe we can't keep it there, but certain things can happen. When it gets there, it does hit that bishop and threaten to take it off, but white does have one reason for wanting to get the bishop here, and I'll explain it because I haven't mentioned it yet. If you look at the pawn formation, white has the outside pawn majority, the queenside pawn majority, 3 on 2 versus 4 on 3 on the king side. So we've said in some of my videos that if you have the outside pawn majority, that can be an advantage. So if you're going to go for an ending, you want to go for some kind of an ending where it will be an advantage to you. And definitely having a bishop pair versus bishop and knight, or a bishop versus knight ending, is definitely an advantage because you can create a pass pawn out of that, keep black occupied to defend it, and then gain some inroads on the other side of the board. Now, I'm not saying white's winning this. He certainly isn't. Black doesn't have those two weaknesses. If you see my lesson on the principle of two weaknesses, you'll really understand. Let's see, that was lesson 007. Okay. You can always find it in my YouTube channel or on my blog. Check my finger notes. There's all kinds of ways to find my stuff. The notes in the YouTube videos. Anyway, what's black going to do here? Now, one thematic thing that black might try, in first instinct, is to play b6. Well, that's got a little tactical flaw to it, because now there's we're going to utilize that bishop's presence on h2 and pop a knight in on d4. Which one do you want to put there? That may not matter. But here, look at that, knight d4. Now black can't take it with the pawn because of the pin. So white's going to get a little tempo on that bishop, and that's what we want. And then plus we're eyeballing b5. That'd be a great square to put the knight on. Just molest the queen a little bit. And tactics like rook d8, we can just take on e6 and then c7, and after black takes the rook. So b6 may not be a good idea. What might be logical for black to do is just play rook fd8, and I want to put that rook there rather than the other rook to keep c8 open for it. Now, the queen doesn't really have a great square to go to. c2 is just going to get tempoed, but that's okay. We'll just put it on c1 for now and go about our business. White can then be planning to play rook d1 and trade off a set of rooks, and then maybe swing the queen over to e1 and hustle the other rook over to d1 and trade off another set of rooks and start aiming for some kind of liquidation where we can utilize that pawn majority. And that's just a general plan. You have to evaluate all the different ideas that come to mind to utilize that pawn majority, and black or white never did seem to get untracked and figure out a way to do that. Okay, so as I said, I think queen a4 was a little overambitious on his part, particularly by the follow-up. But what it does is, I'm trying to combine ideas with now maybe knight c4 instead, but I couldn't find a great follow-up after. Well, let me show you black's next move first. Okay, rook d8. I was thinking about knight c4 here, but black can do a few things. Let's see, knight c4, what was I looking at? I was looking at what was I looking at? No, you can't play e5. I think it was just knight d5. Yeah, knight d5, keeping the white knight from coming to e3. And black's okay here. It's still an even game. At some point, black may be trying for a6 and b5, so white's got to be careful. But knight c4 just looked like a decent square to put the knight to justify the queen a4. But I guess he could have even done it way back here. But then again, he could play knight b3. So anyway, queen a4. And here's where I say I think white's a little overambitious. Well, not quite yet. Wait. Yeah, not quite yet. Okay, so he overprotects the knight on d2, and it's part of his subtle plan. Okay, now a6, and yeah, here it is. So white's got his intention. He wants to try to checkmate black on h7, I guess. That's what else is he going to try to do? He can't get a bishop into h6 too easily to trade it off, so his plan is to follow up with knight g5. And this is all grand, except black has plenty of time to prepare for that. And even if the knight does go to g5, you're not making any threat. But I guess what white's planning to do is play knight g5 and then knight e4 at some point, where to deflect that knight away so that taking on h7 is a threat. But we're still a ways away from setting that up, and we have to justify sacrificing that piece on e4, so it's still not entirely clear how white does this combination. I'm just thinking maybe this is what he had in mind just by the way the game unfolded. So black took preventative maintenance and played h6. It may not be necessary, as I said, because let's just take a quick look and see, I'll show you why. Okay, we're going to allow white to do that plan. Let's just burn a couple moves for black. What's logical? Okay, doubling the rooks on the open file, I guess, is logical. Okay, now we go ahead and do this. Now we chase the bishop. Okay, now the bishop comes here. Well, we're not primed to play knight e4 yet. Okay, so let's we could kick it, and then they can come down here. So maybe rook d2 wasn't good. The bishop might be running out of squares here in a hurry. Well, maybe, anyway, I'm just playing around. Yeah, it's running out of squares. So, but you just get the idea. White's a ways away from doing this, and aside from rook d7, black can play a lot of reasonable moves. Other than that, b5, we'll just burn the move b5. I mean, black still goes here, or even back to c8 if g4. Okay, if it's g4, bishop c8. Okay, fine. White's still not poised to play knight e4, so he's got to set that up. Bishop f3, and then black plays bishop e7, and finally white gets it in. So now, here as I say, at least it's guarded. So so maybe black can't do that, but black can always just at any point in time simply do what he did early, and and play h6 now. Once the knight gets away. So anyway, it's probably okay Black did it, but I'm just saying it's not necessary for Black to worry too much about it, but it's okay that he did it. Now the queen's kind of embarrassed over there in h4. What's it gonna do? Okay, let's just go on and see what else happens. Okay, knight e4. So like I say, since he did this anyway, I'm thinking maybe that was somehow his intent, so he just went ahead with what he had tried to set up earlier. Now Black can't get away with g5 because White will just take the knight and then get the queen out of there. I don't think sacrificing on g5 is worth enough. But now what kind of happens is, because the queen's misplaced, White feels that he can't sacrifice that pawn. He probably can't. See, the rook on a1 is stuck guarding that pawn on a2, so naturally you'd want to take back with the rook, but White doesn't really have a lot of compensation. Oh yeah, he does. Well, not yet. I'm doing something wrong. Black's gonna take on e4 first. Okay, take on e4 first, because otherwise the piece is hanging, and then just go grab that pawn. And White really doesn't have enough to show for it, for the pawn sacrifice. So let's just revert. Okay, so White took back with the bishop, which is kind of a concession in the position, and admitting that queen a4 was a mistake, because instead of bringing a rook to the open file, he's backed his bishop up to a not so useful square and blocked his rook from occupying that square. So let's go on. Now there's a threat on b2 that White has to deal with, and if his queen was back where it belonged on a4, this wouldn't be so much of a problem. There'd be the rook could just go to b1, and a2 isn't loose. So now White starts making concessions in his position. Now he gives himself a backward pawn on the open file. I don't know, b3, was that playable? I don't have really time to look at it, but it might have been preferable b3 followed by c4, but Black's making some progress in neutralizing that pawn advantage. White's never really able to get that pawn majority going. And again, like I say, in effect, what White has done is undeveloped two pieces, still has two pieces undeveloped, because I'm going to consider that bishop on d1 undeveloped, because it went back to the back rank, and the bishop on h2 isn't really doing him a lot of good. So White really doesn't have any good pieces, and Black does. Black's pieces are much better poised to do something. So White just starts spinning around here, and now Black's the aggressor. Now attacks the knight, threatens c3. Black's pieces are coming to life. Now White has a tactic. If pawn takes knight, queen takes bishop check, and gets a pawn back. But Black's careful. He sees that, just drops his bishop back, and now Black's planning to redeploy the queen, and there it is, into the heart of the position. And if White trades queens, it's Black that's suddenly got this pass pawn. May not be enough to win, but Black's got a great position. So just moving on real quick, queen e3. There's White's just kind of tied up here. There's really not much he can do, and his pawn majority on the queen side is pretty much neutralized, and the Black pieces are just poised. Look at that. Look how great the Black pieces are, and what are the White's pieces doing? And that bishop on h2 still is not being a factor. So make a little liquidation. Now another concession, knight to the back rank. Now that rook comes in active. The Black rook's active. The White rook's passive. The Black bishop is active. It's attacking c3. What's a poor White to do here? Knight d1. Now he's stuck defending c3, and Black just anchors, makes that the backward pawn. Stay the backward pawn. And now look at that. The knight's get ready to hop into c4. Great square for the knight. Look at that. Just totally dominating. Just advance the pawns. And Black can afford to trade bishops here because his knight's so good. And the pawns just start coming forward. And Black's not worried about losing the pawn on h6. If White wants it, he can have it. And now that little exchange going into a winning king and pawn ending, and it's curtains. And it's all possible because Black had a much active game. We'll just see the last couple moves here. And there's really nothing White can do. Very well played game by Black. I want to thank everyone for their time and look forward to making another video really, really soon because I got a couple more in the queue, but they'll be here. Thanks again.